بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أما بعد أحبتي في الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, accepts our good and forgives our evil, protects us from kulli su wa makruh. May Allah tabaraka ta'ala bless us with ikhlas, with the bad ala sunnat and nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. May Allah rectify our condition and affairs and help us to be better slaves of His, protect us, preserve us, and the Muslims everywhere. And may Allah tabaraka ta'ala especially protect and preserve our brothers and sisters in Palestine and our brothers and sisters in Sudan. As one of our brothers mentioned, he said, "You didn't mention Sudan during the khutbah." And I said, I wasn't thinking about it. I couldn't mention every place, but may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless our brothers and sisters in Sudan as well and help them to get a stable Islamic state based on the book and the sunnah and with wealth and prosperity. And may Allah help the Muslims to heal, because the Muslims have so much racism and hatred towards one another and tribal separations around the world and here in the West as well, the hatred and the dislike for one another. And obviously, if they dislike one another, that's not based on the book of Allah, and it's not based on the sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. So may Allah heal our hearts and bless us to move beyond the tribalism and the racism and the hatred. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Ahabati fillah, I wanted to talk about or actually go through a reading, even though we've read through this treatise several times before. And it's called Have Mercy Upon Salafiyyah by Sheikh Badr al-Utaybi. And it was a short treatise that he did many years ago, and it has immense benefit because he was trying to, as many of our scholars of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah attempt to do, yu'alaj al-fitan, that they try to heal the fitna that occurs between Ahlul Sunnah when Ahlul Sunnah begins to criticize and attack and dishonor and fight one another. And this type of dispute, one thing we do have to realize is it probably will last till eternity. It's probably something that a lot of times it will not heal. And a beautiful piece of advice I recall from one of our mashayikh in Hail, Sheikh Ash-Shamri, Sheikh Aid Ash-Shamri, Hafidhullah Ta'ala, one of our mashayikh, a graduate of Jama Islamiyah. He was well known in by many of the other mashayikh, and well known for his strength in refuting Hizbiyah and the groups of Hizbiyah. And one of the things he mentioned when some of the fitna that was going on in the separation in Yemen between Sheikh Yahya al-Hujuri and Sheikh Abdurrahman Adani, rahmatullahi alayhi, rahmatin wasi'ah, and then what later led to other splitting. One of some of the mashayikh, I believe they had called him from Yemen, and he was given a lecture, and it was being tele-linked or whatever in Yemen. And I'll never forget this golden advice that he mentioned. He said, if two mashayikh or du'at sunnah in different localities, they don't get along, if you cannot work out your differences, this one, he calls it a sunnah here, and this one calls it a sunnah there, meaning don't busy yourself with one another, but khalas, you have your differences, but call to the book in the sunnah over here, and you call to the book in the sunnah over here, because you're not going to always be able to rectify, unfortunately. There's many reasons for that. And sometimes it's ta'assub. Some people have a blind prejudice. Sometimes people are arrogant, personal issues, whatever the case may be. It's not always going to rectify, but you don't have to spend all of your energy attacking one another, but rather you call to the sunnah in your village, and you call the sunnah in your state, that you're going to be separate, but khalas, just call to the book and the sunnah and busy yourself with that ilm. So that was one benefit I thought about and I try to reflect upon when we see the continual the war between Ahl Sunnah, and when you see the fitna between ulama, when you see so many scholars that we never thought would split, or that we'd see those days because they were so close in the past, and they were doing the lectures together, and they traveled together, and they ate together, and all kind of things, but yet they came. Now we see and wasal ila hada these days, where you see that fitna, where they have disharmony and discord and attack one another. Wallah musta'an. So this small treatise by Sheikh Badr al-Utaybi was written as another source to highlight and hopefully deal with some of that fitna, as was the book by Imam Abdul Muhsin al-Abad, Rifqan bil Ahl Sunnah, or Rifqan Ahl Sunnah bil Ahl Sunnah, O Ahl Sunnah, be gentle with one another, as well as Sheikh Muhammad al-Imam's book, Al-Ibana, as well as Sheikh Ibrahim Raheli's book, An-Nasiha. And so many scholars of Ahl Sunnah, walillahil hamd, in contemporary times have written treatises like this to deal with that fitna. And this is just one of them, and a very short one. So that's why we can try to benefit from it. And so he entitled his nasiha, his advice, Arhamu as-Salafiyyah, fa inna minkum munathirin. He entitled it, have mercy upon Salafiyyah. Amongst you are those who cause people to flee. Munathirin. So in the title, it shows you already the Sheikh's tasawwur in the mas'ala. And it's a tasawwur that many of us have. We see this in a reality. We see some people, they actually are callers to Ahl Sunnah. They may have fell into some hizbiyah. They have mistakes. And they call and make the people flee from the da'wah to Ahl Sunnah because of their harshness, because they're extreme in some issues. Maybe they're extreme in tabdi', maybe they're extreme in tafsiq, or you see some hypocrisy in some of their deeds. They will allow for their people to make mistakes, and they'll keep quiet. But if anyone else from the Sunnah, callers to the Sunnah, makes a mistake, they're quick to refute them and try to take them off the Sunnah, belittle their honor and status. So we see that these habits and these traits are madhmuma, they're sinful, but Sheikh Badr was trying to remedy that. And also min bab fa'idah, also another benefit. Myself, Shadid Muhammad, and Nader, I think his last name is Muhammad, and he's Canadian. May Allah preserve him. He did his master's, I think, in Jama Islamiyah. And we went to see Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab in Medina. Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, I forget his last name. May Allah preserve the Sheikh. We went to his house. Anyway, we met him in the masjid, and then we all went to his house. We said, Sheikh, we have some questions. Can we sit with you? So then we went to the Sheikh's house. As usual, his doors were open. He we sat and we talked. We sat in his office. He, as usual, treated us with the greatest of respect. He always called me doctor because he knew I was working on my master's thesis. So that's what the Arabs like to do. So he'd say, doctor. I say, Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. So anyhow, we were sitting with the Sheikh. We had some beautiful pressing questions. And one of the questions we asked about was, that, hey, we have amongst Salafis some who are very extreme in tabdi', and some who are very light in implementing the principles, meaning they sit with Ahl Bid'ah and they do this. They are, as they like to say, mumayya. And I don't know if we used that term at that time. But anyway, so we asked the Sheikh, what should we do? And he said, no doubt, obviously, being in the middle path is the way forward. But he said, and this is why, and a lot of people give me flack for this, even some of my colleagues, but I go with what I studied, and I go with what I sat under the beards of ulama. Most of these brothers, may Allah bless us and bless them, they might have sat with some ulama, but they didn't really get that same competency, I would say. So what the Sheikh mentioned, he said, Haulai aqrab ilayna. He said those people who are extreme, but they're on the dawah, okay, they're calling to the book and the sunnah, and they are establishing those principles, but they fall into some extremism and tabdi' and some certain things. They are closer to us. I know some of you don't like to hear that, but it's just, and that's why one of the issues, why one of the things over the years why I've said about Salafi publications, the good that I've said about what they've done, not all the negative. Yes, that's neither here nor there, whether they're Hizbis and they're not even Salafi Aslan or what have you. But I do have to speak the truth that they are closer to us than somebody like, for example, Yasser Qadi, Muhammad Hijab, his friend Ali Dawa or whatever, and all these other people. They are not Daniel Hakikatu. And no, those guys are Ba'id and Salafiyyah. So we have no ties. We cut them, slice right there. It's finished, done. We don't need to talk about those guys. Those guys are closer to us because they sat, some of them sat with those same scholars. We were in the same sittings. They were, they respect mostly those same usul, foundation principles, and at least in the Aqidah. Whatever mistakes, whatever extremism, maybe their extremism takes them off the sunnah. So khalas, maybe we should discount them. But my point here is that they are closer to us than Haji or some takfiris or some psycho mubtadi'ah. La, ba'id anna. Those people are far from us. Those people who have some extremeness in some aspects of the usul where they yukhalif, they go against, they've fallen into some bid'ah, they're still closer to us than those other people. So I want you to understand that. I want you to understand. So then when the Sheikh says, he says, Arhamu Salafiyya فَإِنَّ مِنْكُمْ مُنَفِّرِينَ. Because verily from amongst you, O Salafis, are some who cause the people to flee. They run away. Why? Because you're too harsh. And all they see you is doing refutations. And all they don't see you as a force of maslahah, of benefit and rectification. You're not building communities. You're destroying people and destroying communities and causing more splitting. We're not with that. But as I said, that even the people of bid'ah, they have different levels. They tafawat as Ahl Sunnah tafawat. They have different levels of their deviancy when we're talking about the Ahl Bid'ah, and Ahl Sunnah has different levels in their level of adherence to the Sunnah. So we have to understand, it's not all the same. We don't just say he's a mubtadi'ah, khalas. La, have a mubtadi'ah, aqrab ilayna min thani. Because this mubtadi'ah, he does believe in Tawheed. His mistakes aren't in Tawheed, but his mistakes are in his application of the principles of takfir, for example. Or this one, his application of this. He's a deviant in that respect. So Ahl Sunnah has different levels. Ahl Bid'ah has different levels. Understand that. I don't know if a lot of people are teaching that. I'm not sure, because the way they give the tarbiyah to people, they just put everyone in one category. And this is incorrect. So the Sheikh begins. He begins his treatise. He says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And he, after the Basmalah, he begins in his treatise by saying, all praise is for Allah, the Lord of the worlds. And may peace and blessings be upon our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam and his family and companions. Amma ba'd. From the greatest blessings of Allah upon every Muslim worshipper is that Allah the Most High guides him to the path of Tawheed and Sunnah and keeps him safe from the paths of the people of deviation. This means the people of bid'ah. After this, Allah guides him by making him firm upon the path of Tawheed and Sunnah, not wavering to the right or left. This is a blessing because if a person begins upon the Sunnah for a period of time and then he slips up towards evil, he will be like those people who commit evil actions, considering them to be good deeds. He thinks his actions are according to Islam and the Sunnah, and yet they are not so. He considers his actions to be from Salafiyyah, whereas in reality his actions are far from Salafiyyah. Whoever Allah the Most High honors with Salafiyyah and the manhaj of Ahl Sunnah, it is upon him to strive to be upright and firm upon the methodology of the righteous Salaf in all his statements, actions, and situations by which he worships Allah the Most High. So this is a great faida from the Shaykh. He's telling us about the importance of clinging to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ in everything you do, in your aqidah, in your methodology, in your deeds and actions. Are you smiling at the people like the Prophet ﷺ did? Are you doing small kindnesses as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala urges us to do and as the Prophet salawatu rabbi wa salamu alayhi illustrated? Are you doing those things? Have them in a sunnah. This is from sunnah. This is from Salafiyyah. This is from Salafiyyah. So he's illustrating the point that the Salafiyya is the deen kamil. And this is why when we go to the treatise where Imam Barbahari, he mentioned, he says, Islam huwa sunnah wa sunnah hiya al-Islam. He says, Islam is the sunnah. And the sunnah, it is Islam. Okay? Don't think that the sunnah is something other than the pristine form of Islam. The sunnah is Islam haqiqi. It's the real Islam. Okay? When you deviate from that, you obviously you deviate from true Islam. And another point that we need to highlight in what he said was the importance. He mentioned also about the one who is on the sunnah and then he makes a mistake or he deviates from it. So it lets us know no one is guaranteed guidance. There are scholars, there are people who are known for the sunnah, and then they slipped up or they deviated, plain and simple. Either they made a mistake, that's one thing, and we still maintain their honor, and that's a whole nother discussion, which we've talked about in detail in many of our sittings. And then there is the one who's actually deviated. He was a Salafi scholar. Let me give you an example for those who may or may not be aware from scholars from scholars who were well known in the past 20 years or so, 20, 30 years, that were known for the sunnah at one time, but then they deviated, and you can see it plain as day now. But at the time, it caused a great fitna. One of the fitnas that we had in contemporary times where this was the case was a fitna of what we say, this happened in the Arab world, especially in Yemen, was the fitna of Abu Hassan al-Ma'rabi, okay? So he was known as a scholar. Don't think he was lightweight in his knowledge. He has knowledge, okay? And he was known as a person of the Sunnah, and how many scholars of Ahl Sunnah at the time defended him, and he was good. But when Sheikh Muqbil died, rahmatullahi alayhi rahmatan wasiyah, that's when Abu Hassan began to deviate. And his statements and what he would have been afraid to say before during the time of Imam Muqbil, he began to show that. And it only grew. So he grew in deviation. But it caused a great fitna in Yemen. And then it caused a great fitna in Saudi Arabia. And then it caused even in the English-speaking world, which it should have never been really brought there, but it did. And the point is it just goes to show someone can be on the path, but don't think that just because someone was once Salafi or was once on the Sunnah that they are going to live and die upon that, because it can happen to any of us. And that's why we always ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim, guide us to the straight path. The Shaykh, he goes on to say, so he says, whoever Allah the Most High honors with Salafi and the minhaj of Ahl Sunnah, it is upon him to strive to be upright. He says, this is the istiqamah, which is linked to Iman. As Allah the Most High states, indeed, those who say our Lord is Allah and then remain firm, the angels will descend upon them saying, do not fear and do not grieve, but receive glad tidings of paradise, which you were promised. This is the importance of being on istiqamah, practicing your deen, not compromising your deen, striving your best to be on istiqamah, to have good deeds and stay away from sins. Also, in Sahih Muslim, it was narrated upon the authority of Sufyan ibn Abdullah al-Thaqafi, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, who said, I said, O Messenger of Allah, say something to me about Islam so I do not need to ask anyone after you about it. The Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam replied, Qul amantu billah thumma istaqim. He said, say, I have Iman in Allah and remain firm thereupon. Look at that. That's what those scholars, they refer to as a jawami' a-kalim. Jawami' a-kalim, which means that something which is very precise in its a very short, precise, profound word or statement that has immense meaning and import. So this hadith is from those ahadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he said, say, I believe in Allah, and then walk straight. SubhanAllah, how simple is that? And if you practice that, you have quwwah. You have so much strength. That's why it's a good reminder. I'm so glad we came to this nas, that sometimes when you feel weak in your iman and you feel things, khalas, don't listen to the shaitan. Say, amantu billahi, I believe in Allah, and then do some good deeds. You'll feel better, and it will increase your iman. Because that's that istiqamah. It's that simple. Pray your salats. Pray your salats on time. Do the other acts of ibadah, and that's why we have to keep an eye on the clock. I think I still have a half an hour. The time flew. Alhamdulillah. So we'll probably do this in a couple of sittings. So mere iman, meaning iman in the heart, is not sufficient unless a person remains upright and firm upon its milestones and symbolic acts of worship. Similarly, a person merely ascribing to Salafiyyah is not sufficiently to be described upon Salafiyyah unless the person is upright upon the way of the Salaf as-Salih, the righteous predecessors, in every principle which differentiates them from the people of innovation and desire. So this goes to a qaida, which we've mentioned countless times, a principle, and that is al-ibra bi-haqa'iq laysa bi-musammiyat. Al-ibra bi-haqa'iq laysa bi-musammiyat. The reality of something is in its substance and not in the name or the claim. And again, I always give this example. I gave it yesterday for those who may not have been. But I said, for example, this coffee, okay? Someone else could say, no, that's water. Let's make wudu with it. And I said, no, this is coffee. I've already mixed it with my ground beans, and I've got cinnamon in there. I've got those other cardamom and all these other things that are mixed in there. And I put olive oil in here and butter and even a little bit of sugar today. So it's no longer, it's changed its substance. And they say, no, I saw you use water and most of it was water. Let's make wudu with it. I said, nah, the substance has changed. Even though you want to claim that this is water and that we can make wudu with it. No, its reality is it's a new substance. And we refer to it as coffee. And it's okay coffee. It's not delicious. It's got too much stuff in it, mixed in there. Too much powder. I've got to learn, get the skills up. So then he says, in this article, I speak openly about what many of my Salafi brothers quietly think about, due to what they see from many people who nowadays ascribe to Salafiyyah. Whereas in reality, these same people are harming it due to their disgusting actions and shameful statements. So he came hard. To the extent that people insult pure Salafiyyah due to them. And people have turned away from Salafiyyah due to their harsh mannerisms, insults, and abuse. And we've seen this in many of the communities. And this is not just an issue in the West. Okay, it's not just happening in America, in the UK, and France, and Germany. But Salafiyyah in many Arab-speaking countries and in many African nations and so forth, in Asian countries, it has a negative connotation because the people have seen the mu'amalat of some of the du'at and some of the callers there who came back and didn't rectify. Instead, they spoiled. They didn't build, but instead they spoiled. All the people saw from them is they were talking about this one, who the people loved, and they talked about this one, who the people loved. And it doesn't mean that what they were doing was necessarily incorrect all the time, but it's from hikmah and wisdom to know how and when. If you know that the people are attached to some Deobandi scholar, and you're like the only Salafi there, it's only a few of you, you already know what the repercussions of that. So you do not go and destroy in the eyes of the people, but rather you use wisdom in giving the dawah. And rather, if you're in a place like Afghanistan, it may cost your life, or a village in Pakistan, it may be your life. And then what did you achieve? Did you spread the dawah? No, you got killed. And you just said, oh, Salafi, and you said this. They said, no, you're a Wahhabi. So be wise and have hikmah. And what happened for a lot of callers, and this is I've traveled, I've been to Indonesia, I've been to Ethiopia, and I've seen it firsthand, where people are repulsed by the doubt. They won't even hear it because they already have a preconceived notion because of certain individuals who are calling, and they weren't calling correctly. Okay. And this is a masiba kubra, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides whom he wishes. So he says, yes, amongst the Salafis today are those who cause the people to flee and test the people in their religion. They harm the Salafi manhaj due to their disgusting statements and strange actions, due to their oppression and ignorance. In fact, due to their detested hizbiyah for individuals and personalities, due to their criticizing people who, when the same matter is found in who they love, they do not criticize. Right there, he just unpacked a whole bunch of things that we could spend a lot of time going into. But I think a lot of us are aware, and if you listen to some of the lectures I've done in the past and what other students of knowledge and scholars have done and talked about, then you're aware of these things. But it just goes to show you that you can be a source of, you can either be a source of khair or a source of shar. Okay? Perhaps you could be in the middle, where maybe you're doing things that are mubah, you're not active in dawah, I don't know. But in general, if you're calling either something good or you're calling to something bad, as a caller in Islam. So if you don't want to be a source of destruction and causing the people to flee. I'll give you one true example. One of the brothers I was in Yemen with, he was from the UK, and he told me about a story of a brother who had just come from the airport. I think he was in Damaj or somewhere for 1 year only. 1 year he went away and studied and learned some Arabic. And when this brother picked him up from the airport, he said that they were driving the car, in the streets of London or wherever they were, Birmingham, I don't know, going somewhere. And the kid sticks his head out the window. He saw some tabligis walking. And he said, you blood, he called them, with a British accent, flipping failures or flipping mubtadi'ah, something crazy like that. What in the world does that have to do with the call to Ahlul Sunnah? What in the world have you achieved? And have you done anything for the deen of Allah, or you just look like a stupid, rambling idiot sticking your head out the window, yelling at people? I never heard of anything like that. And I've never seen anything like that from the ulama. I was in Yemen and Saudi. I visited Egypt. I didn't see any kind of behavior like this. I've never seen that from the scholars and even the students of knowledge. So what kind of individual goes away for 1 year and they think they have something to offer, and then they yell out the window, flipping failures, or you're flipping mubtadi'ah or whatever? This is insane. This is insane. And because of this type of insanity, the people have caused a lot of others to flee from the dawah, and it's caused a great fitna, that fanaticism, I think somebody said, or I need glasses. No, he actually said fikum, but it's fanaticism anyway. They're fanatical, and this fanatical is all tajawuz al-had. It's all beyond the bounds. It has nothing to do with Islam. It has nothing to do with the Sunnah. It has nothing to do with Salafiyyah. So then he goes on to say, so these, as he mentioned, he says, Salafiyyah, due to their harsh mannerisms, insults, and abuse. And this is the kind of thing, when you get, people are supposed to be Salafis, and this really happened. Another situation, I won't mention his name, but some of the people may know. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. What happened? It was to Ismail Beaumont. He told me, I think he shared that with me in Medina. And then I saw it, I looked it up on YouTube, and I think they took it down. Anyway, a particular brother that we knew from the Islamic University of Medina, from a particular place in America, of course, was threatening him and the other brother. And they happened to record it. And I think they deleted it. But this brother in Kuliya to such and such was cursing and saying, I'll blank you up, I'll F you up, calling them all kind of things. When I see you was on site, and they said, Ahi, we're recording this. We're going to take this to one of the scholars. He said, F that. He was just rambling. What kind of Salafiyyah, what kind of dawah was that? What happened? And you are I know this particular brother who was cussing like that. I knew him in many classes. He used to sit with many mashayikh and was known. And then certain things happened, and look how the tables turned on him. And I won't mention details for those who know, because we don't want to get in spreading the sins and the wickedness. But that humiliation sometimes can come back to you. And the point of mentioning that is how some people's wicked gang-like and cult-like behavior has led them to tarnish the image of Salafiyyah. We know many examples of brothers showing up to other brothers' workplaces saying, hey, you better quit talking about our da'i or we're going to do some things to you. Coming to his workplace, threatening him, okay? Potentially coming to gunplay. All kind of crazy things. Even what happened recently with Shamsi and those guys jumping him, although that wasn't Salafiyah, it had nothing to do with even those people claiming that, but it just goes to show the negativity of Hizbiyah, of having blind prejudice and ignorance and zeal all combined together, and that it can illustrate itself in a violent manner. All of that is freed from the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the people need to correct themselves and be callers to good and not callers to evil. He goes on to say, he said, they harm the Salafi manhaj by propping up people as measures of association and disassociation. So he's talking about al-wala wal-bara. That, for example, if you say, oh, you better love Khalid Green, or we're going to make takfeer of you, or we're going to boycott you. You better love Shamsi or this. We heard you speak Abu Khadija. We heard you this one, this person, that person, and you're making your love and your hate based on the individual. I heard you speak about, some people, they won't even hear what you have to say. I heard you mention Hajori years ago. You're ignorant. You're a mule. You're this. Maybe it goes to racism. Okay, what is this? This is blind prejudice. This is blind prejudice and ignorance and arrogance, racism, and all the other foolishness that comes as traits of Hizbiyah. Traits of, and that loving and hate based on personalities and positions. Okay? Wallah musta'an. So he goes on to say, they harm the Salafi manhaj due to their disgusting statements and strange actions, due to their oppression and ignorance. In fact, due to their detested Hizbiyah for personalities and individuals, due to their criticizing people who, when the same matter is found and who they love, they do not criticize. Okay, we already read that. These people who they've propped up are not those whom the imams of the religion rely upon. Neither are they themselves from the major well-known imams. It can almost be said that this is detested Hizbiyah in the cloak of Salafiyyah. And that is the danger. SubhanAllah. Wow. Let me give you one example. And I had done a YouTube video, and it was some, they cut the screen picture, sent it to me, and it was like a marriage group or something like this. Okay. And it was supposed to be a Salafi marriage site. And the moderators, were busy kicking out people, and they put as a disclaimer, and I made a whole video and put the clip on there anyway, and I erased the names though. I covered their names, but I just wanted to show the negative, sick Hizbiyah that can even lead to maybe you leaving Islam because you might have the type of love and hate for an individual to such an extent that it's you go to ubudiyah. That's why you've got to be careful with personalities. Okay? Kullu ibn Adam khata. All the children of Adam makes mistakes. So this particular youngster hadn't studied, relies on certain individuals and maktabas to translate everything for them, was saying, whoever disagrees with anything that Sheikh Rabi says or something like this, then out of our group, blah, 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 blah. The Sheikh is, it was just like giving the Sheikh a blind slate to just be perfect. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Be careful of this sick trait, thinking that you are adhering to Salafiyyah, thinking that you are adhering to what pleases Allah. La. Allah did not tell us to have this blind allegiance to individuals. We love our scholars. Speaking of Sheikh Rabi, I have all of his books. I have a great love for the Sheikh. Okay, but I don't follow him in every fatwa. I don't follow him in every opinion of his ijtihad that he says this one is off it or that. No, I have to look into those issues if I have the ability to do so. Okay? So the point is we love the ulama, but we don't make them sacred or divine. And we judge them by the scale of the book and the sunnah, the truth. And that goes to the statement of Imam Malik, La yurafal haq bi rijal, walakin yurafal rijal bil haq. We don't know the truth by men, but we know the men by the truth. And he goes on to say, yes, there is no flattery in the religion, nor is there any ambiguity in explaining the path of the believers. We may as well bid farewell to Salafiyyah if we do not strive our collective best to rectify Salafiyyah and return those ignoramuses to the garden of knowledge and manners. Look at that. Barakallah fiqh, Shaykh. Allah yubarak. Allah yubarak. May Allah bless him. And manners, cultivate them upon loving goodness for people, politeness in speaking, respecting the scholars, understanding the fiqh of priorities, attaching importance to the situation of the ummah, attaching them to the gatherings of the scholars, and attaching importance to the books of the well-known imams and their statements and beliefs. That was a beautiful statement of the Shaykh right there, which shows us the importance, again, of attaching to the book and the sunnah, not attaching to the personalities. That doesn't mean we don't love, respect the ulama sunnah, but we love them in accordance with their adherence to the book and the sunnah. And then he goes on to say, he says, have mercy upon Salafiyyah. Arhamu as-Salafiyyah. And he says, Salafiyyah is not only jarh wa ta'dil, which means criticizing and praising individuals, finding pitfalls, finding the mistakes of people, investigating mistakes, and appointing ignorant youth to these responsibilities. Salafiyyah is not being negligent about knowledge and righteous actions, calling to Allah and loving goodness for people. We're going to stop there, and then we'll come back because it's getting closer to the time I'll have to go to Salat. But we're going to explain this really quickly because there's immense benefit there to let us know that when we talk about Salafiyyah, even when we talk about the concept of minhaj, people misunderstand minhaj. When are you going to teach a book on minhaj? When are you going to teach? SubhanAllah. I think you know nothing about minhaj if you say that, because those books of Aqidah and that give you the methodology of the Salaf, give you their minhaj, how they adhered and understood the Quran and how they approached the Quran and the divine nusus. That is minhaj. That's methodology. Okay? So Salafiyyah is not only criticizing and praising individuals and finding the mistakes of people, and, as he said, appointing ignorant youth. So that's where we're going to really stop. Is that really, as Imam Fawzan mentions, that is not the place for the beginning student of knowledge to be getting into those issues and doing refutations and getting involved in refutations. So what about the laypersons? Why do we have so many laypersons who haven't studied Islam, who've studied very little, who've never made even a journey to go sit with Ahl al-Ilm, but yet they want to refute everything, and they want to speak about everything, and they want a position on everything, and they want you to have a position on everything? Why is that? That is because some of the people have reached the level of blind ignoramuses. Blind, they're blind because they're blind following and just cutting and pasting and taking their deen that way, and they're involving themselves in things they shouldn't do, that they don't have the knowledge to do, they don't have the competency, they don't have the wisdom, and they don't have the fiqh, but yet they want to jump into it. They want to be in the mix. They want to be in the mix of it. And that is not Salafiyyah. That is not going to bring you closer to Allah. The fact that you got involved in refutations. It's not going to, that right there in and of itself is not going to bring you closer to Allah. Especially if you're not mustahiqli that. You are not the person who is supposed to do that. You've now stepped out of your space. And you're involving yourself in things that you don't have the knowledge to involve yourself in. So that is rejected. And that's what, because you will end up finding that people like that, a lot of times they make more mistakes than they get things correct. And this has to do with even people who are half-baked in their knowledge. They studied some, but then they're talking about major issues and getting into it all the time, arguing and debating, and, getting into all kind of fitna. I'll quickly see if there's any questions, and then we'll reconvene for those who wish. We'll have the second sitting when I come back from the masjid, insha'Allah ta'ala. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, to accept our good and forgive our evil. Sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. And we will have another sitting probably in about probably about half hour, I would say, probably, inshallah ta'ala. Now, jihad an-nafs is serious. To fight off your own desires is incredibly honorable. It's incredibly important in the deen, and it's one of the best types of jihad. Is fighting your nafs, fighting your own desires. Wallahu musta'an. If I live with my parents along with my siblings, and my siblings disrespect and yell at me and my mother, what should I do if my father's negligent? Well, all you can do is probably advise your siblings. If you have the strength and it's not going to cause too much fitna, and you're the oldest and you can knock your brother out without it being too much of a fitna, then yeah, sometimes it might be physical. You know best what is going to be the problem and the way of rectifying in your own household. If it's like a really younger brother and you can physically say, hey, get it right, and it's going to have a good positive result, then inshallah ta'ala. If not, then you will just with kind preaching, and you comfort your mother and say, hey, please forgive them. Please overlook them. They are foolish. I don't like it. It's disrespectful. So you just increase your good deeds and try to be kind and gentle with the people. If the intensity of whispers, disbelief and fake news, half-naked girls, blah, 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 increase intensity, what's to be done? The same thing I tell you every week is to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, amantu billahi, say and affirm to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I believe in you, Allah, and then do good deeds. Best. Cut off the whisperings. You have to cut it off. How was your time with the ulama of Ahl Sunnah, the likes of Sheikh Suleiman, Sheikh Abdul Razak, Sheikh Muhammad Hisham, etc.? I've talked extensively about my time with them, and it was probably the best time in my life. The most highlighted time, and because with those mashayikh, it was when I lived in Medina. So living in Medina, praying Jumu'ah in the Haram and other salats and going to durus in the Haram and sitting with those scholars was immensely valuable in learning and practicing your deen to help you stay strong. Because even when you get weak, to sit in the company of the scholars, to see their certainty and to see their strength and their iman and what they exhibit and the knowledge, that is an iman strengthener in and of itself. So those kind of things are a part of my personal history I will never forget, bi'idhnillah ta'ala, and hopefully can always draw lessons and strength from. I learned so much. It's like I said, I just kind of gave you a little bit. We went through a lot of books with especially Sheikh Suleiman and Sheikh Abdul Razak and Sheikh Muhammad Tahiri or Abu Salah. We were able to get very close with him because he used to teach us in the Institute for the Arabic language and for the study. It's like the Medina course that they do during the day, only they had a night program. And, you could graduate with the Arabic language. You get like kind of an associate's degree or something in Arabic and Tawheed. So Sheikh Abu Salah used to teach us Tawheed. That was a subject. He used to teach us Tawheed. He would also go through Sahih Bukhari and some other durus. And then we were able to go to his house and have sittings with him. So I could see Abu Salah 4 or 5 days a week and just sit with him and hang out and ask questions. So that was very beautiful time. My uncle's jihaadee-takfeeree, such as making takfir of the Muslim rulers and countries and criticizing the Muslim rulers. What should I do in this situation when I have some knowledge to refute him? So you can, in a respectful way, don't argue and debate with your uncle, but you can say, "Oh, unc," or whatever you say, and in different countries and different cultures. You can say, "Listen, may Allah bless you and preserve you. I just prefer not to discuss those issues, but if we look at the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if we see what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says when he says, Allah wa rasul ulil amri minkum, and when we see what the Messenger sallallahu rabbi wa salamu alayhi said in this hadith and this hadith and this hadith, it just shows me that I don't think we should spend our time on the leaders. Simple. So you're not going to change your uncle's mind, maybe. And nor should you waste time debating and arguing and splitting family ties, but rather you can give dawah with some gentleness and kindness, and you keep it pushing. You don't have to, you don't have to argue and debate and convince everyone. You meet someone in the street. Everyone I meet on the street, I'm not trying to convince them. Oh my gosh, you need to take this position. Oh gosh, you just said something about this. If I have the ability, you amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar to the extent of your ability, but it doesn't mean you're going to argue and debate and get into discussion every single time. Otherwise, you're just going to be doing that all the time. But if you have the time and you have the ability and you're able to, the qudra, then inshallah ta'ala, you do so in the manner that you're able to. And with kindness and gentleness, especially when it comes to dealing with a family. Snow shoveling around churches. Is it regarded as helping the public from dangers, falls, or cooperating in sin? Jazakallah khairan. So no, it's not cooperating in sin necessarily. The church is there, if that's your job, you're getting paid money, you could abstain from it, or you can do it. I don't see any harm in that, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, that you are, if you're a painting company and you have a job, you have the job to do, and it's painting the church. Well, that's what your job is. You're not, inshallah ta'ala, you have no, you won't be held accountable for that, and Allah knows best. No. As a revert, alhamdulillah, can I change my chosen attribute after learning more? I'm not exactly sure I understand what you mean, but I don't know if you mean that that learning affecting your character. So learning can enhance your character, and it can enhance the good. It can bring out the good. If you do talib al-ilm, this can help you be the best that you can as a person. And as a believer in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this can help you by doing good deeds. So this does change hopefully your conduct and enhance the good. Now, how can a beginning student of knowledge become grounded in the fundamentals and basics of the deen despite having poor memory and hifz? So by having poor memory and stuff, as Imam Sa'di, I believe, speaks about it, and Imam bin Uthaymeen, read those same texts a lot. So it will be as if you memorize them. So for example, if you can't memorize Kitab al-Tawheed or Usul al-Thalatha or whatever, read it a lot. Read it a lot, and it will be as if you have memorized it. You'll begin to know it. By default, you'll know it as if you, almost memorized it. So this is one of the ways, and that'll help you preserve the knowledge. So the last question, it's kind of a big question. To what extent you talk to the gender in the East, in the West, in the South, in the North, as limited as possible, out of necessity, as it befits. Okay, you're in the souk, you're in the marketplace, you're going to have to, and it's a woman selling whatever. Okay, yeah, how much is that? Oh, it's like this. Okay, yeah. Well, what about the other color? You're going to talk to her about what you need to talk to about that product, what you need to know as far as information. In your workplace, it's also the same of what you need to, but try not to go beyond the bounds. That's basically it. You try your best, fear Allah as much as you can, to not go beyond the bounds, because the reality is when you're mixing like that, it's very easy to get casual, especially if you're day in and day out working with women as a man or whatever. You can get easily lazy in your tongue, lazy in your interactions, and it's easy to, have problems. May Allah protect us and preserve us. And we'll end there because I definitely got to get up the street. They're going to pray, I think, in 5 minutes. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, to accept our good and forgive our evil. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wasallam. When I come back in about a half hour, we'll do another sitting in this book. Wa sallallahu alaihi wasallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad, inshallah ta'ala.